Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stress Free IEP, the show where we help families build their village so they can raise their neurodivergent children with confidence, clarity, and support. I'm your host, Frances Schefter, special education attorney, advocate, and fellow parent walking this journey right alongside you. Each week, we shine a light on professionals, services, and real world strategies that support your child both inside and outside of school. From navigating the IEP process to finding the right providers in your community, we're here to help you connect the dots and feel empowered every step of the way. Whether you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube or listening later on your favorite podcast app, we're so glad you're here. As you listen, we'd love to hear from you. Drop your question in the comments or ask them live. We're paying attention and we promise to respond. Now let's dive in and meet today's amazing guest. Emily Daniels is a trauma specialist and former counselor who created the Regulated Classroom. She trains educators worldwide on trauma-informed practices and has reached thousands through workshops, conferences, and media features. She holds a master's in education, an MBA in sustainability, and is a nationally certified counselor. Her work integrates multiple trauma-focused approaches, including somatic therapies, sensory-based methods, mindfulness, and Reiki. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Frances. This is great. I'm happy to be here.
It's so funny that you say Reiki. My mom does Reiki, and we actually had a guest, the director of Fusion Academy of Rockville, also does Reiki. And it sounds like it's starting to come out more, how should I say it, more mainstream than it used to be.
It's funny, too, because it's kind of how I started in all this somatic work many years ago in my 20s. Because back then I was doing yoga, and the yogi instructor, the person who would lead that, at the end we do Shavasana, and she'd come around and Reiki you, and it'd be like, oh my God, what is Mary doing at the end of like that yoga session? That was so amazing. And then later on, it turned out that Mary was a Reiki master, and I did some, classes with her and learned how to deliver Reiki essentially. So that was my first experience of really learning about the power of the body to heal the mind.
Right. And even, I would say, even if you don't necessarily believe in it, it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that was the greatest thing about getting certified is you were like, you need to practice on lots of different people. And my husband was one of the people I practiced on often. And he's a school psychologist by training. He's very like linear and sequential as a thinker, and very like rational and all the things. And he was very skeptical. And he, at the end of it, he'd be like, oh my God, I really do feel so much better, whatever it might've been that we were working on. So that was very, very confirming for me to see him respond to it in the ways that he did.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome.
Yeah.
So I know teacher burnout, it's such a big thing. I mean, I left teaching, not necessarily because of burnout, but just because I wasn't making the difference I wanted to in kids' lives anymore. And I hear that so often. So what can we do? I know like the nervous system regulation and all of that, like how can Reiki and what you do help teachers and prevent burnout so we can actually keep those good teachers that we have teaching?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And so one of the things that I think I didn't know or recognize when I worked as a school counselor was just this understanding of the mind-body connection, because it's not how any of us are trained. And I sort of stumbled upon it in my own exploration of, in my own healing journey, essentially. And so I think even to today, we don't recognize that a lot of what's happening for our students is nervous system dysregulation, because we just don't know about these things. And it's funny because I started this work, meaning the Regulated Classroom. I started that work in 2017 when I first went out on my own as a trauma-informed schools trainer. And it's interesting to me because back then I watched the trauma-informed schools movement kind of essentially get a lot of the newer science that was trying to be shared at that time ended up getting sort of overlooked, frankly, and people calling things that they'd been doing for a long time trauma informed, because everybody thought trauma informed is about being relationship based, and that's what trauma informed is. And so there was a lot of sort of, I would say, dilution of the meaning of truly being trauma informed. Most people had no idea about the CDC or anything, any of the things that were trying to happen as a result of becoming of that applied science, essentially. And so I'm seeing the same thing happen now too with nervous system state regulation, and people thinking that this is a relationally based concept and not understanding that actually we're really talking about physiological cellular functioning. So we are talking about deep biological roots of human
Yeah.
behavior, human development, human experience. And so when you start to look at it through those lenses, there's actually quite a lot that teachers can do in the classroom to help themselves reset their physiology in the face of the overwhelm that they experience on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know something, sometimes I think back to, I taught in Liberty City in Miami, which was basically the projects. And there was a lot of trauma that went on there. And I saw, and I know I didn't realize it until probably working as an attorney with the abuse and neglect system in DC on
Mm.
secondary trauma, and
Mhm.
how,
Mhm.
how it impacted me so much. And I didn't even realize it back then.
100%.
But now, like, just hearing about everybody else's trauma, how that impacts you in such a
Mhm.
negative way, that
Mhm.
it's just like we need support from that, and from secondary trauma.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, one of the things that I talk about early in my trainings when I bring educators together is just, can we just first of all hit the pause button on how do we experience the work ourselves? Because that's never been a question anyone's ever asked a professional, really, in a school setting. When I worked as a school counselor, I would often say to my administrators, like, okay, I'm trying to support this teacher with this student, but this teacher's struggling. And inevitably, the response to that, or the refrain to that, was not about the teacher. We're here for the kids. Doesn't matter how it
Um,
affects adults. This is about the students. Like, and I understood what that intention was there. Like, let's keep this focused on the kids. But it was neglectful and negligent, because we are impacted by our most frequent repetitive experiences. And that's not just true in the first 18 years of life. Humans are the most adaptive creatures. That's why we've crushed surviving as a species. And so we adapt to our most frequent repetitive experiences. And if we're in the classroom and we're working with students who have their own traumas of history or other challenges, of course, that is going to actually change us. We're going to actually adapt in the face of that. And a lot of times, those adaptations that we make, they're not conscious choices. There are things that are occurring at the unconscious level, but they change us, and they change what we experience and how we experience our work. So that's a really, like, you're absolutely right. Of course, we are impacted by not just our students'
yeah,
stories, but how our students present themselves. That affects us.
yeah, and how they're living and all that. It
Yeah.
just reminded me of when I was teaching Poinciana Park Elementary School. Cynthia
Mhm.
Clark was the principal, and she was, I guess, I would say probably ahead of her time, because she did one of our teacher work days. She had somebody come in to teach us about, like, I remember we did a visualization exercise, and they
Mhm.
taught us about how to support ourselves. And this
Mhm.
was the early 90s. So this wasn't like when all
Wow.
the trauma informed and all that stuff
Right.
was
They're
out
starting to come
there,
in. Yeah.
but she, like, I remember we had a masseuse come in at one point and, just did all of these extra things to help us, to support us, knowing the environment we were in. And it was
Yeah.
such an
Well,
amazing thing. Yeah.
she sounds very sort of, like you said, pioneering, or, she was a real renegade in her time, I guess
Yep.
you could say, right? I love that. Yeah, and I think probably her instincts there were spot on, meaning, like, I want to help my staff de-stress,
Yeah.
and that's right. And I think what's hard is that we don't recognize that there are things that we can actually do on a daily basis with great frequency and repetition that enables us to truly reset the nervous system our nervous system and our students' nervous systems. And it doesn't really matter their age even, but we can do
Right.
things together that actually help us both to reset back to baseline, back to what I teach people about, because I'm a polyvagalist by training. And so, that's my perspective on the nervous system, is a polyvagal perspective. And so that means that there are three primary circuits of our nervous system that are functioning, that is active moment to moment. And one of those primary circuits is known as the ventral vagal circuit. And that's our circuit of social engagement. So when we're experiencing ventral vagal energy and activation, we can be pro-social spontaneously with those around us. And so your principal, it sounds like, kind of understood that, and understood that maybe a massage would help you get back to a ventral state, or maybe some visualization. No, those are settling responses, settling strategies or interventions. They help the body kind of move back towards baseline or resting. And a lot of times right now, what happens is educators are spending so much of their day in a chronic high state of activation in the nervous system. And so it's when you're up here and you're constantly go, 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 got to get it all in. You feel overwhelmed and bombarded by all the things that are coming at you constantly. That's really takes a toll on your body and your mind. And it really overtaxes your physiology. And so that can absolutely lead to things like anxiety and depression and burnout and, all kinds of mental and physical challenges. So your principal
Yeah.
understood that you needed to counter that. The thing that was, I think, a little flawed in just probably because she didn't know, but we think, oh, that would be nice to do. But then we recognize, like, the next day when that resource is gone, people are right back where they were, because you
Right.
can't just have that experience once and expect that the reset will be sustained. You have to have that resetting experience happening over and over and over again in order to actually adjust the way your body is calibrated in its physiology. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, 100%. And it's
Yeah.
it's reminded me of when everybody would say, "Oh, teachers have the whole summer off." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, we really
Mhm.
don't, because
Mhm. Mhm.
okay, so middle of June, we end school. So end of June, beginning of July, whoop, you're right. End of June, beginning of July, we're doing all of our medical appointments that we've neglected all of the school year, because to take a day off school to go to a doctor is just 3 times the
Impossible.
work, right? Like,
Yeah.
just not. And then we get to start decompressing, and by the time we truly decompress, we're already in the middle of August and getting ready to go back to school. And it's just like, so yes, we get the summer off, but no, we don't.
Yeah, and
No,
the
we
thing,
really don't.
exactly, and it's funny because people talk about a honeymoon period that you have when you first come back to school, and a lot of times what I would say is, again, this is with nervous system lens perspective. This isn't what I used to think when I worked in schools. I didn't understand it really. Well, I mean, I think we do at sort of a very intuitive level, but I didn't have the science to help me understand it the way I do now. But it makes sense to me that, like, those first couple weeks, not only does it feel like the kids are more pro-social and quote unquote easy, but we are somewhat recovered from the chronic activation that we experienced through the school year. But then once the body recognizes, like, oh, we're back to that again, those protective forces
Yeah.
come in and we start getting more, activated in service. The language I use is in service of protection instead of in service of connection. And also the demands start creeping in. We start expecting kids to start performing, and we're doing testing and assessments in those first couple of weeks. So of course, like, the first few days of school feel great. And then by week 2, week 3, everyone feels like they're falling apart. But really, it's the nervous system recognizing an old pattern that is being reactivated, coupled with the students are also recognizing that the good times they were having are over, and now
Yeah.
work and productivity is expected. So that's, from a nervous system perspective, that's how I interpret that kind of dynamic at this point.
Which makes sense. It totally makes
Right.
sense because it triggers
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah.
So
And that's part of that's what I do in my work, in my framework, the regulated classroom, is I'm trying to teach teachers, well, any educator really, about their nervous system and how it functions, and to recognize the signals and the signs within the body that you are moving outside your window of tolerance. Because once that starts happening and you experience the work as draining or stressful or agitating, or conversely, you go into sort of like that, chronic state of numbness where you're sort of like, meh, I don't care, whatever. I'm originally born and raised in Massachusetts. So when I train about this, I kind of joke about it because you got to have some humor when you talk about these things,
Right.
right? So
Exactly.
I talk about dorsal states, which is polyvagal terms, but as being like Massachusetts, whatever, like that's just a
Mhm.
place you can go. Many of us go and retreat to in order to sustain through an experience. So if things are chronically stressful in a school environment, we might just get to that point of giving up. And it's not really even a conscious choice. It's
Yeah.
just something that sort of it's an adaptation that you're making over time to sustain in the experience. But I try to teach teachers and educators about the shifting nervous system states and how it feels and how it shows up in their body and then in their thoughts. And then I teach them how to reset, like through these four core practices: connectors, activators, settlers, affirmations. These represent very specific qualities of experience that we know reset the body's nervous system and also support sequential growth and development. So there are a lot of things that you can do through the course of the day to help you reset back to a regulated state. And that is what we need to be able to do in order to not get us stuck in patterns of protection. Because that's really
Yeah.
what burnout is. Burnout is a pattern of protection that has become habituated in the mind and body, or in the body and
Right.
mind.
And it's like these days, with the cell phones that are attached to us all the time and and the this and that and the other, it's like we don't have any downtime. It's
Nope.
like 24/7, go, 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 go,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
And
and it's
I
funny you bring that up because the technology really is rewiring us too. It's rewiring
Mm,
us to not actually benefit from the presence of another in the way we once would have, because we are so addicted to our tech. And this isn't just our kids. We talk about it with the students, but we don't recognize that we're all, myself included,
mhm.
all addicted to our technology because the technology is designed to be addictive. That's the whole design of it. And so what it does is even when we don't have the technology right in front of our face, we're still drawn to, I got to check my phone. I got to see what's
Right.
happening. Did I get a message?
It's
Did
on
I
my
get a
watch.
did I get a Snapchat? Did I get an email? Like you're drawn back to that thing, that app, whatever it was that you were doing previously. And so what that does is it means that even in a social context, we can be experiencing less benefit from co-regulation from another safe person near us because we are so distracted by that pull for something else. And so
Yeah.
again, that's another thing I teach educators a lot about, is just like how to recondition their circuitry to be able to recognize when they're not present and to come back into the present moment with their students to reset themselves. So yeah, there's a
Right.
lot. Technology is
It's
such
killer.
a challenge in so many ways. So
Yeah, no, exactly. And I remember, like, it's so funny. I remember back when, we always had the cameras, I date myself back to the film camera days, and
same.
like always taking pictures, right? And always taking
Yeah.
pictures and all that other stuff. And I have the box of pictures upstairs that I haven't looked at in decades. But taking the pictures, and now I have the phone on me, and so it's much easier. But I try not to take pictures all the time
Mhm.
because I try to be in the moment, and if
Yeah.
I'm trying to catch the picture, I'm
Yeah.
not in the moment,
Yes.
and that's
Exactly.
such an issue.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. 100%. Um, and those things, those, I guess that phenomenon that you're describing of not being able to be not being present in the moment if you're taking a picture or if you're on your phone or whatnot, those are cultural common conditions now that we experience that only reinforce burnout patterns.
Yeah,
So that's the irony of it, is that like you could leave work on a day, feel super burned out, go home and just like want to do nothing but be on your phone because you're trying to de-stress, you're trying to
right,
get some quote unquote downtime, not recognizing that the thing you're actually engaging with can be reinforcing a pattern that's already established in the nervous system that's not aiding your well-being. You know what I mean?
right,
It's like making things, maybe not making it worse, but it's not making it better.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's so true. I stopped watching TV. like regular TV. I watch movies and stuff, but like regular TV because I realized like I was watching like the Chicago Fire and Chicago Med, and I was realizing that as much as I love this show because of the storylines in the background, it was
Mhm.
anxiety producing.
Mhm. 100%.
Watching like the
Mhm.
accidents, the fires, the
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I'm on edge and feeling
Uh-huh.
anxiety. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
why do I think this is relaxing? Like
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's distracting. It's distracting,
Right,
right? But exactly right. Like, so even watching something like that, even content can be activating in the nervous system. And again, in service of protection, which anxiety is a state of the nervous system that is protecting us. It's a state of fear, right? And
right,
so, yeah, you absolutely can get that through content that you see on the social media or content that you see on a television. And some of us really kind of love it because we also love that hit of adrenaline when
right.
some of us are really quite addicted actually to the surge of cortisol or adrenaline that comes in when we first experience high activation.
I remember in my teenage, early 20 years, my dad asking me one time, like, "Why do you watch soap operas? Like, why do you watch that crap?" And I'm like, "Dad, because it makes my life look so much better." You know, right?
Right?
Like,
Oh
there's
no.
all this drama and
The
stuff,
girls that work
right?
with me here in my office, they are in their 30s. They're millennials, and
Uh-huh.
they're so addicted to reality TV. They love it so much. I'm like, "Guys, I can't even watch 5 seconds of it. It makes me so stressed." And they're like, "No way. I feel so good about my life." So I'm like,
Right.
"Oh my god."
Exactly, exactly. It's just
Yeah.
so hard. Sorry, I'm turning off my Bluetooth so I don't lose my headphones. Like again, like I usually take my phone off, but I forgot to turn off my Bluetooth. And for whatever reason, when I'm on my AirPods, if I have a phone that goes somebody call that goes to message, my phone picks up the AirPods and takes it away from the computer.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know why. So I like lose sound for a minute or two. So
Yeah.
I was able to divert that.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I mean, it's like we're so on top of like, got to check the email and got to do this and got to do that. Like it's, it's almost like a badge of,
Mhm,
pride when somebody says,
mhm,
how you doing? Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so busy. I
mhm,
have so much going on.
mhm,
It's like, and like that's where our society is right
mhm.
now.
And
And,
it's especially true in schools. And it's funny you say that because I experienced that when I worked in schools, and I still experience it when I go and travel to schools to train. People, especially before training, you'll have people coming in, and I'm listening to them, just kind of connect and catch up or whatever. And it is always, it's funny because I actually call it sucky town in my training. They're immediately like talking about like, oh my God, this kid did this, or oh my God, I had this parent email, or whatever it is. They're connecting over a shared experience of stress that can reinforce kind of being stuck in the overwhelm of the work. And
right,
it is like you said, it's almost like a badge of, it's almost like a subtle competition, like who's more
yeah,
busy and who's more stressed. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you think
right,
that's bad? Listen to what I dealt with, da, 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 or this kid and he did this, blah blah blah.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And it's like that's not benefiting anyone. And
No.
somebody else once told me about like how with the stories when you do experience trauma or you experience through somebody else reading somebody else's story, like each time you talk about it and tell the
Hmm.
story again, like you're reliving, your body's reliving that trauma again.
Hmm.
And your
Hmm.
body is in like, so what do you do? How do you like turn that off so that you're not, re-experiencing all that trauma?
One of the things that is very true is that the body holds on to associations it makes in threatening experiences. This is true, actually. The body holds on to a lot, but it especially holds on to things that are associated, sensory cues that are associated with the presence of danger, threat, novelty, or risk, which from a survival perspective makes a lot of good sense. So if you had an experience, and that's what trauma is. Trauma is something that overwhelmed your ability to cope in the moment. It was something that shifted your body instantly into protection mode, and it's the residue of that protection mode that hangs on in other lived experiences or other experiences you're having that get triggered unconsciously in moments. And so you might hear something, you might see something, you might smell something, and all of a sudden you're back in that experience that was overwhelming and threatening and traumatic, right? So that's what trauma is. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time with people trying to help people in the training recognize is the coupling that occurs with, or more plainly put, their reactivity, like recognizing their reactivity in situations that don't merit or warrant that level of reaction. Certainly, there are experiences in the school day that could warrant a pretty big response. But oftentimes, what we have instead is we, the adults, when we're burned out, we are overreacting to relatively innocuous situations. But what's happening is the body is not experiencing it as that. It's experiencing what it's experienced before. And
Right.
so it's revving up in service of protection. What I try to do
Right.
is try to help them recognize those moments in their body experience, recognize that dysregulation, and recognize that they need to shift their practice in the moment in order to try to reset themselves. So not necessarily in the moment of a huge explosion, but like if and you
Right.
can feel it. You can feel in your body when you are starting to feel stressed, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you can feel when you're moving towards, oh my God, I'm gonna be outside the window of tolerance any moment now.
I need to
One
step out.
person says one more thing, I'm gonna
Yes.
probably lose it here, right? So that kind of building action is when I teach them to recognize those signals, those body signals, and then to engage in a practice of co-regulation in that moment with their students. Like to
Mhm.
literally own it and say, guys, I can feel this building in me. Try this with me. Grab your rhythm sticks. We're going to rhythm stick this out for 60 seconds together. And the kids do it with you. And then all of a sudden, everything shifts. They shift and you shift. Because the truth of the matter is that burnout is not an isolated experience, it's a dynamic experience. And it generally comes from your context. So the students in your context are likely stressing your nervous system. And
Yeah.
so, and conversely, we're stressing theirs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's this bidirectional dynamic. And so that means that you need to reset it all. You need to reset the collective so that you can get back to a more pro-social ventral space. And and the reason I say all of that is because that's also the seat of healing. What I just described is actually what the applied science of trauma helps us to understand is that you don't get over trauma. You find ways to recouple past experiences with new experiences that are positive or pro-social in nature, right? Because the cues that existed at that moment in time, they just got coupled up. It doesn't mean that that cue, it's in and of itself, is a source of threat. I know this might sound strange, but even something as simple as like a tone of voice that is kind of condescending. Some people can hear someone speak to them at a condescending tone of voice, and it literally sends them straight over the edge.
Right.
And so, is there some way to pair various tones of voices with moments of high activation in service of connection? So, I teach people how to play together, how to play with their students. I teach them how to do collective rhythm making with their students. I teach them how to calm down and settle. I teach them how to affirm their experiences in moments so that they are building an active catalog of positive associations with cues in the moment. So that's all of that work is healing work. And that's what our schools need. Our kids benefit from it because
100%.
many of them had trauma, right? So they need healing
Mhm.
work, but not therapy because we're not doing that. That's not what we do. We're schools. So, but
Right.
they need therapeutic experiences, which can just come from the milieu of their daily experiences with their teacher. And they, so they need it. And it also supports their growth and development, like when they get to play together, and the kids don't play like they once played. Like that's a big part of what we talk about in unpack and training. You know, they collective rhythm making, like what is that even? What does that even mean?
Right.
Like this modern
Right.
day, what does that even mean? What does that even look like? Right. Whereas for thousands of years, that was a part of every faith-based tradition or every indigenous group that had their own ways of collective rhythm making. And
Yeah.
it's a form of human synchrony. It lets you sync up with other people and feel safe with them and get regulated with them. So that's what I'm trying to teach them is we can't keep doing the things that we've been doing and expecting things to be different. We've got to change how we actually move through our days and prioritize these kinds of resetting experiences for our own benefit and for the benefit of the kids. And
Right.
people, for the most part, are like, "Yeah, I love that."
Yeah. Well, no, I do. Like, as I'm thinking about it, you're not teaching teachers how to reset themselves. You're teaching them how to reset themselves and be examples for kids and help their kids reset. And
Exactly.
that's what's the amazing
Exactly.
thing is that, there are so many times I say, like in IEP meetings and stuff like that, if you would just like the movement breaks,
Mhm.
if every transition from this subject to that subject or this activity to that activity, if you all would get up and say,
Mhm.
okay, let's all shake it
Mhm.
off, let's
Exactly.
do, I don't know if you know the ready list, but that's my
Mhm.
daughter's PT uses, let's do the ready list. Let's get
Mhm.
ourselves ready for the
Mhm.
next thing. Like,
Exactly.
how regulated would we all be? Like so
Exactly.
much more, right?
So much more. And one of the things I teach people too is that we should be doing that like every 10 to 15 minutes, not once
Yeah.
every 50 minutes, not once every 90 minutes.
Wow.
Even when I sit in trainings with the adults, I cannot get the adults to be actively engaged for more than 7 to 9 minutes at a time. Honest to God. And I can see in their
Wow.
faces when they go offline from me, if I don't
Yeah.
tell them at the beginning of a training, please tuck your tech away. People are sitting on their phones 5 minutes into a training. Like we don't even or on their computers, we don't even know how to be present. And so we want our students to constantly be attending for like a 45-minute block if they're in secondary, or even a young child in first grade. We're asking them to sit and do literacy for 30 solid minutes sitting. I'm like, no, developmentally inappropriate, right? So the thing about it is we all do better when we honor our biological needs. And the biology is for certain movement. Like
Yeah.
our whole species, if we couldn't have moved, we wouldn't still be here as a species. It's only in modern, education and modern work that we have become a sedentary people or species. But forever, that was not what we were. We needed to move to survive. So moving was survival. It was how you
Yeah.
found your resources. It was how you, found shelter. It was, how you got away from a predator. It was, I mean, you had to, it's how you made food or grew food or, it's
Right.
so critical. It's how you built your
Instead
shelter.
of
Like
like
you had to be
going
able
on
to,
to Uber Eats and, getting it
right.
delivered to the front door. Like,
Right, but yeah, and so but
yeah.
then we come to modern school and we're like, we're just gonna have these kids sit all day, and we literally do
Ugh,
have the kids sit
I
all day, especially
know.
once you hit middle school and high school. Other than they're changing classes, they're sitting all day. It's
And the
so
changing
sad.
of classes is so overstimulating because you have all the kids and all the noise and everybody trying to go, and do I have the right
Because
support?
they've
Am I
got
going
3
the right
minutes to get
place?
to their other class and just
Right, like, that
chaos.
it's just they don't have I do this a lot with IEP meetings. I talk a lot about how our kids, our neurodiverse kids are masking all day because they know they have to keep it together, and then
Mhm,
when they get home, they just completely fall apart
mhm,
because
mhm,
all day they've not had any support. Their nervous system has gone nuts and has been overstimulated
mhm,
continuously for 6 to 8 hours, and then what do
mhm.
you think's gonna happen? Your
Right.
nervous system's gonna, like, blah as soon as it
Well,
can.
especially because a lot of children who are neurodivergent, this is true of adults as well, but just people in general, we struggle with integrating auditory stimuli just in general. And there's a lot of nervous system reasons for that. But just that alone would be like the integration of auditory stimuli. So that means like loud noises or unexpected noises or, sort of just the cacophony that exists in a classroom. If we could move in that context, our bodies would do a better job of more efficiently organizing that quality of stimuli. But again, because we're making people sit still or expecting them to sit still for the most part, it's just we're working against ourselves. We're working against what needs to, what's best for everyone. So
Right.
a lot of what I say to educators is, your principal or your district or your state or whomever knows what I do and what I teach. And so I want you to feel encouraged to take the time to reset. You are
Yeah.
not wasting time to reset. In fact, you're buying yourself more time that is meaningful because it's engaged, it's contextual, it's relational, like it's it's the basis of everything you want happening in a classroom,
Yeah.
so you're not wasting time to do these things. And
Right.
that's probably one of the hardest things to actually convince educators of is that it's okay to
Be
essentially
silly
divert
for a
from
minute. Right.
yes, to not do what the curriculum says on page 12, line 12, like,
Yep.
so many of them are just like, I have to do it like this. And
Because I
they're
have
like,
to get through this in this amount of
yeah,
time because
yeah,
my
it's a lot of
administrator expects
rigidity.
it and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a lot of rigidity, which I understand. And it's, and
Yeah.
rigidity is also associated with burnout and unhealed trauma. So yeah, they
Yeah.
need a lot of encouragement to use themselves as the barometer for what's needed in the moment and to take the time to reset with their students. But
Right.
when they do,
And I mean,
it's remarkable what can
right.
happen.
I'm putting it on like it can easily translate into a parent and their children,
Oh, yeah.
like 100%. Like,
Yes. I mean, we just
yeah,
wrote a new book called The Early Years for exactly that. Did you say parents and children?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly why, because we wanted this information and this understanding to actually be able to extend to families and parents as well. Like, same thing. It's all the same thing.
yeah,
We are social beings. We need each other, and so there are these mechanisms that have biological basis that enable us to connect with one another. But because we live in such a I don't know, we just live in a very different modern time. We really, really do compared to most generations before us that
right.
don't honor those biological needs. It's funny
Yeah,
because I was just doing a training with early childhood educators last Friday, and um, we were doing some of the connector practices that's in this new guidebook. And they had never, these were young people, they were like in late teens, early 20s, preschool teachers. And they were like, I don't know what London Bridge is. I don't know what Ring Around the Rosie is. I've never done.
what?
They literally, this, yes. So there
Oh,
is, play has changed so dramatically. So much play has been replaced by technology and screen time and also adult directed activities that children's ways of play that have been around for thousands of years, literally like hand clapping ditties
mhm,
are thousands of years old in every culture, um, are being lost. They are going extinct because kids don't have
wow,
that experience. And then they have their own children. And because they didn't have those experiences, they don't know how to teach these experiences, these forms of play to kids. And the reason why any of that matters is because these little ways of being all were opportunities to reset the nervous system.
yeah,
So they were embedded in our lived experiences that in ways that they no longer are. So that's what I'm
yeah,
trying to teach them about. Yeah.
unbelievable.
Isn't it?
So,
It's really
yeah,
interesting.
I think it blows my mind that people wouldn't know what Ring Around the Rosie and London Bridges are. Like, it
No,
just
no idea. Never played it. Didn't never do it. Don't know. No idea what Cat's Cradle is. Yeah.
actually,
Miss
some of my
Mermaid,
kids
all that stuff. Yeah.
in yeah, some of my kids and Girls on the Run are doing the Cat's Cradle stuff, so I was happy to
Mm.
see that because I hadn't seen
Mhm.
it in a while. But yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
you can always tell, like,
But think about it, like,
they
we
must
used
have
to do, like, things like double dutch and jump rope at recess time, and
yep,
things like hopscotch, and
hopscotch.
yeah, no,
Yep,
no, 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 no. We have kids who can't even skip
crazy.
anymore. Like, they don't, yeah, there's
Wow.
a lot. So,
Yeah, yep.
anyways, I mean, there's a lot,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I
there's
know
a
we
lot
could probably
all of this, but it's
yeah,
good just to know that I think it's helpful to know that when people experience burnout, there isn't anything wrong with them, meaning it's not a personal
yeah,
failing, and it's sort of an inevitability if they don't have resources that they understand how to use in order to help
right,
them get reset. Because it's very overwhelming to be a teacher today.
yeah,
Um, Not to mention that
yeah.
everybody's also so trained in like active shooter drills and
Ugh,
lockdown drills and reverse evacuations and all the things that remind the body on a daily basis, like you're in danger, danger
yeah.
lurks, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that
So,
is so scary. Yeah.
mm,
So you mainly work with schools, right? Like, so how does like if somebody was like, "Oh, this is interesting. I want my teachers to learn this." Like, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and like what should, like who should be
yeah,
contacting you?
yeah. So, regulatedclassroom.com is our website. And then we also have social media, Instagram and Facebook, that we're very active on. And so we encourage people to follow along there if they would like, just because it gives you a real sense of what the work is that we're doing. And a lot of people really like it. It's so funny because I'll go places and people will have actually downloaded our posts and laminated them, hung them in places. I'm like, this is so cute. This is hilarious.
That's
Um,
so
I know it's nice because there's a lot of like really helpful tips and reminders and practices and just, it's a resource for people who want to understand what behavior and development looks like through the lens of the nervous system. And
yeah.
then, yeah, they can just reach out through the website if they're interested or DM us on the social media. We do every month we do a free live webinar. We do record it. And so that's the third Tuesday of every month. Usually it's 3 to 3:30 Eastern time. We do a live free webinar just to introduce people to who we are and what we do. Yeah, and we've grown quite a bit. We've worked now in 19 different states across the US and have had clients from Canada and Ireland and Australia. And yeah, it's spread quite a bit. We sold 45,000 copies of The Regulated Classroom so far. And The Early Years is our newest forthcoming book, which we're hoping to ship by mid-April. So if people want to check that out, the pre-order is live for that as well. And that's a resource for both parents and for early childhood providers. So yeah, we love to meet new folks, and yeah,
Awesome.
just been
And
spreading our
so, right, before we wrap up, like, what is one little small step? And I'm going to say teachers, but I'm assuming it's for parents, but like one little thing that we could do like today that will help reset.
So here's the fun thing is that even just the practice of noticing sensations on the inside of the body shifts the sensations. So what do I mean by that? Notice if your heart rate picked up. Notice if your throat feels like it's closing. Notice if your belly is churning. Like, notice the inside signals that are telling you that you may be moving outside your window of tolerance. Just notice those and the particular quality of them, because as soon as you start to actually notice those cues, they begin to shift and release. It's really interesting. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the end all be all of everything, but just notice, and then notice what happens after you start noticing it. Because so many of us, especially teachers, we spend most of the day trying not to notice the things that are knocking at our door. The sensations, the need to go to the bathroom, the need to, get something to eat because you're starving, like all those body signals that we're literally just like cat boxing, thinking they'll go away or we can attend to them later. Instead of doing that, notice that on purpose and then see what happens. And that's true for parents too. And the one thing I would say as well, when you notice that quality of experience on the inside of the body, whatever it might be, like let's say it's that your heart rate increased, notice if you can see how it may impact how you experience that moment, and in particular, how it affects your thoughts. Because when we get shifted towards more dysregulation, like when our nervous system shifts in service of protection, it changes how we experience the moment. So it changes how we experience the environment, how we experience the people around us, and it changes our thoughts. It makes it so that we are more protective. We may see things in more critical ways. We may be more judgmental. We may be more like less patient, all that sort of stuff. So just kind of follow sort of how the body feels and then how that may be impacting how you're experiencing the moment. And that's a lot of work right there.
I know, right? But it's so needed. And thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of your words of wisdom of how we can all de-stress.
Yeah. Look us up. We have lots of resources that we try to share to support teachers. We're very passionate about it.
We will, and we definitely have your links in the show notes once we're live now, but once we publish, they'll be there.
That's wonderful.
And
thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate being here. It was a great conversation.
Of course, loved having you. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Stress Free IEP. We hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, or just a little more peace of mind as you support your neurodivergent child. Next week, we'll have episode 137, where Leah Ellis, teaching kids entrepreneurship and real-world leadership. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone in your village. You can always learn more and connect with me at schefterlaw.com or follow along on social media. Until next time, remember, you do not have to do it all alone.